Hello, everybody. Welcome. Sorry, it looks like I just went live. There's some technical difficulties there, but hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Caleb, and welcome. Today, we got Q&A. It's the last Friday of the month. So if you're familiar with Galt Advocacy and these weekly live streams, then you know that every last Friday of the month, we try and do a Q&A session for all of you. So we'll give it a few minutes, like always, for people to log on and chime in. Estella, hello. Thanks for being here. If you have a moment to tag somebody in the stream or share it to another special needs family or a support group, that goes a long way with getting these Q&A streams out. And this is kind of an anything goes, right? Whether it be IHSS, Regional Center, Medi-Cal, IEP discussions, right? Let's talk about all of it. I will do my best to answer your questions. And if Teresa, if you're watching, which I hope you are, behind the scenes, you could drop a comment of any upcoming events or news, things that maybe we could talk about and share. Forgive me, I didn't connect with you beforehand to ask about that. We are lagging a little bit on my end, everybody. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry if it cuts in and out. Mason, hello. So, excuse me. How's everybody doing? Let me know where you're coming from here in California and if there's anything in particular you want to talk about today. I know right now, let me pull this up here. Looks like we have some people coming from YouTube and from Facebook. So awesome. It's cool to see some of the YouTube folks coming into these streams as well. As most of you who watch us every single week know that we started here on Facebook and the Facebook stream platform here. And so it's been cool to see it bridge over to YouTube and hopefully eventually, Instagram and other platforms as well. But we are talking all things special needs related today. So again, if you have any questions in regards to IHSS, protective supervision, regional center, or maybe you want to share something that's going on in your life, maybe you need some help with, or maybe you just want to share with everybody, you are more than welcome to. Marissa, last year during my phone annual renewal, my mom's IHSS agent, I'm assuming you mean social worker, seemed to get aggravated that I wanted to have Galt Advocacy represented on the phone. Any advice moving forward for her this coming October? Well, everybody has a right to have an advocate or representation. And so it's definitely not okay to be upset with a recipient or a provider who wants to have some support with them. That's not an uncommon thing, right? When you go to IEPs, a lot of times you have representation. When you go through regional centers, sometimes you'll have representation. Excuse me. And so sometimes these social workers with IHSS, they maybe don't quite understand the level of complex emotions that you may have to go through as a caregiver, right? And so they themselves a lot of the times want to be your advocate. And so it's about coming from the right place, I think. Some social workers who may have a really poor experience with advocates, in some ways, a lot of advocates can be really aggressive, right? There's been times where I'm working with a social worker who the advocate that they may have worked with was extremely aggressive and stepped on their toes in some ways, which prevented them from doing their job correctly, right? And so there is some understanding on the social worker's perspective. But Marissa, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. So to long wind of it, just to answer your question, it's good to set that expectation. It's good to coordinate with your advocate if you're working with us, to connect with the person that you're working with beforehand and say, hey, last year, the social worker gave us some grief about this. And then your advocate can give them a heads up and say, hey, I'm going to be present during this phone call, which is perfectly fine. My client has given me permission to do this. And so that's how you can get around that. It's never going to be perfect, unfortunately, but hopefully that helps. But that is a great question, Marissa. Have you had this experience with multiple social workers or just this one that you're currently working with? Oops, sorry, everybody. Lost me for a minute. My apologies. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for dropping the comment. We try and do our best, at least I can speak for Galt Advocacy. I can't speak on other advocate groups or other individuals, but you said this was your first renewal. Okay. So yeah, every year around the same time, you'll have an assessment. And that's to gauge the changes that have occurred from last year's assessment, right? If hours need to be increased in a certain category or maybe even decreased because maybe the need has gotten better or, it's improved, right? So the renewals, the annual assessments, they're necessary, but sorry. But it is important, I think, to continue building that rapport with the social workers. And that's, again, that can fall in the job of your advocate that you're working with, right? And thank you for the likes, by the way. If you guys can like, love, share, that really helps push this information out to those who may need it. And if this is your first time, welcome. Like I said, we talk about all things special needs related. To right now, we're talking with Marissa and her IHSS case. But yeah, so I like to give social workers the benefit of the doubt, right? I don't think most social workers get into the line of social work for the money per se, right? I think a lot of it has to come with their love for this space and their willingness to want to help, right? But at some point, there has to be some expectations here of right and wrong, right? And so to be mad at somebody about having representation, that's never going to be okay. Marissa, I just don't want her to get mad right off the bat and maybe have it weigh the case, right? Yes. So that's, yeah, it's a very good point. However, retaliation, although can happen, that is the benefit of having representation. So most counties, most social workers are very familiar with Galt Advocacy, among other advocate groups. And they at this point know the drill. They know that if you're being represented, they can't use anything against you as like a retaliatory issue because they're mad about it. If they want to be salty, the fact that you have representation, they'll have to deal with that internally, because if that shows at the assessment and your advocate is present during this meeting, and if they're doing their job correctly, then their job is to kind of protect you from those challenges. And so most social workers kind of know the drill, that representation is here to help. Representation is also there to help the social worker. It's to help all parties involved, the caregiver, the client, the recipient, as well as the social worker. And so if the representation is done right, then everybody wins, right? There's some peace of mind for you as the caregiver. The client is being advocated for from kind of an outside perspective, an expert in the space of special needs or disabilities in that case, whatever it may be. And then the social worker, whose job is to allocate this benefit appropriately. And so, Galt Advocacy is very good at understanding the rules, the policies and procedures, the regulations that come with IHSS and things like protective supervision. And so sometimes social workers also need to be educated. And that's just a part of the representation. So either way, Marissa, again, I really appreciate you sharing. And I'm sorry that you've had kind of like those feelings of, worry of the social worker being aggressive or rude or hostile in any way, because that's never going to be okay. But that's why, to maybe help prevent that, I always, as an advocate over the years, what I always like to do is connect with the social worker before, if it's possible, and just announce that I'll be there. Get that out of the way. They can be mad at me, right? They can be mad at the advocate, but we wouldn't want them being mad at you, because that's not your problem that they're upset. That's their problem, right? Thank you, Estella. I agree. Great questions here. Always great questions. think, Marissa, I think you're so far the only question that we've had, which is great. Leaves room for some others. Let me know. We can talk, again, all things IHSS, Protect Supervision, Regional Center, if you're just tuning in. Today is Q&A. So this is all about you. Whatever questions you have, I would love to try and help and address. And I'll kind of come up with some questions on my own as well to kind of fill in. Keith, good afternoon. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of this community. Let me know if anybody has any upcoming assessments like Marissa. We can talk a little bit about it. And if there's any questions in regards to it too, right? Let me know if anybody's had a supervisor or multiple social workers show up during an assessment. That's something that we do see from time to time, right? Especially when there's maybe been some challenges. So like with Miss Marissa here, you mentioned the social worker being a bit aggressive. There have been times where maybe we've had to take things in our own hands a little bit, where if there's friction with the social worker, then they may not be able to do the job well, right? And you need to have a good relationship with your social worker. You don't have to be best friends, right? But it's helpful. It's very, very helpful when the social worker is really understanding and recognizes the needs of your patient that you care for, or your loved one, your parent, or your child who has special needs. And so when we're all on the same page, it makes for a really awesome dynamic. And that's the goal. Ultimately, that is the goal. It's not to fight the social workers or constantly tell them that they're wrong, or that, or call them out on a lie, right? I mean, again, it's a part of the job to hold them accountable, to make sure that these things go smoothly. But the ultimate goal is to work with them to make their job easier, so that we all can be advocates for this patient, for this recipient. So the floor is yours, everybody. Let me know if you have any more questions. I don't know if you noticed, probably did. I don't have Mr. Dakota by my side today, which I'm really sad about. Teresa, if you're still watching, let Mr. Dakota know that I miss him. I'll send him a text too. Miss him today. But for those of you who watch every month, we have Dakota and myself usually partnering up on these Q&As. So it's always really fun. But I'm solo today. He is busy. Well, you'll have to give him grief next week or the week after, next time he's on. Sorry, everybody. I didn't have any other questions queued up beforehand to help fill in some time. But again, this is your time. If you have any questions for me relating to IHSS, the special needs community, regional center, anything here, I'm happy to try and do my best to address. But on the topic of social workers and reassessments, I feel like a lot of people get worried and scared regarding their time with a social worker. I will say that right now is a pretty sensitive time. When we're talking about something like protective supervision, we are seeing protective supervision patients or clients under attack a little bit. We've never seen IHSS remove or deny protective supervision as much as they are right now. And so if that is a challenge you're experiencing, excuse me, please feel free to share here in the comments. Back to Marissa. Your mom has protective supervision because she has Alzheimer's and wanders. If I bring up all the things that she did last year because they are still the same, is that sufficient? I have some dates and times logged. More than that, I don't know if this year they're going to be renewing over the phone or in person. It's very hard because my mom doesn't remember everything. It basically calls me a liar. So Marissa, sometimes these assessments can be done over the phone. Most of the time, like 90% of the time, they're going to be done in person. So if your social worker hasn't made that clear, you might want to clarify that with them when the time comes. I think you said that the assessment is going to be happening in October. Is that what you said? I forget. But yeah, it could be over the phone. That does not happen very often. I would expect it to be in person. And as far as like sufficient evidence goes, so you've already done the job of proving the need for protective supervision. So that burden of proof is on you when you're pursuing this benefit. So you don't necessarily need to go above and beyond every single year to show tons and tons of evidence. You do have to have a game plan, which is what we help with as your advocate, of course, right? There are some things that you do have to provide, but to think that you have to like rebuild a whole new case and present it to the social worker, no. Yes, if the same challenges, the same behavioral challenges and concerns are the reasons that got mom protect supervision last year are the same reasons today, then those would be the same things we would reiterate. So what's really important is when you come to these assessments is to match the information from the previous meeting. Now, of course, if things are different, then things are different, right? You have to say that, right? If mom no longer wanders, then you don't want to say mom wanders just because you want to keep PS. If that's not a behavior anymore, then of course you'd have to, you know, it would be your responsibility to relay that information. But if mom still wanders, if she still is forgetful, if she still struggles with her orientation skills and judgment, and all these things are still reasons as to why you can never leave her home alone, then yeah, I would say that. And I would reiterate that and say that, hey, the same things from last year are the same things today. And with us, you know, we usually keep notes and records and file to make sure that we go over what happened last year and say, hey, these are some of the things that were shared. Is this still the case? And if you say yes, then that's the game. That's going to be a part of the game plan with the reassessment. Excuse me. Teresa from Galt Advocacy says jury duty. I'd want Dakota on my jury. Well, we now know where Cody is. So Dakota, excuse me. So Dakota is on jury duty. Lucky guy. Lucky. Can you imagine having Dakota on your jury? You know it'd be a thorough decision. That's for sure. Dakota is a very, very bright young man. Somebody I would trust deeply in that situation, for sure. I trust him a lot in a lot of areas here. I've known Dakota a long time, and I do know that he is a thorough individual. I agree, Teresa. I'd want him on my jury as well. Laura, for the annual assessment, is it okay to say right off the bat that nothing has changed in regards to protective supervision? Last year, the social worker wanted a lot of specifics as to what my son is doing. I had Galt Advocacy on the phone during that time, and she stepped in to help me. So thankful for Galt Advocacy. Well, thank you for the kind words, Laura. I'm glad Galt Advocacy was able to step in and help. So yeah, I mean, right off the bat is kind of the question you have there, right? So I would say feel it out. If you know that would be perfectly fine to say to that specific social worker, sure, there's nothing to hide here, right? The game plan every year is not to be malicious or to hide things or keep things from the social worker, right? There is an expectation of being maybe careful with what you say and how you say it, right? But not with the intent of wanting to hide something. And so if the message is that all the same things that we talked about last year are the same things today, then yes, that would be something that you would want to bring up to the social worker. Typically, when they do the annual assessment, they'll ask you, they'll say, hey, have there been any major changes since last year? And if there hasn't been any major changes, then that would be the answer, right? Sorry, phone's blown up. So would I say it like right off the bat? Not necessarily. I would let the social worker sort of dictate the start of the assessment, right? Maybe you can help bridge that by starting a question or starting the questions and say like, you know, hey, so what would you like to go over first? Would you like to start with his need for protective supervision, whatever, right? And if they say, sure, let's go for it, then that's when, yes, the game plan would most likely be, well, nothing's changed too much. What do you have in your notes? Is there anything specific you'd like to go over, right? But again, if you're going to say that everything is the same from last year, then you better remember exactly what you said, right? Or again, if you're working with Galt Advocacy, that's a part of, you know, the advocate's job is to help you with that game plan. Another great question. Thank you, Laura. And I didn't ask, I normally ask. Hopefully you all can see me okay and hear me okay. I had some technical difficulties in the beginning, so hopefully that didn't stir things up too much. Marissa, if my renewal is in person, my mom doesn't remember and she tells me she tells people I am lying or that it's not true. I don't know how to handle this. Okay. So this is also something very, very common that we see a lot with elderly parents or elderly loved ones who have dementia or Alzheimer's. If you have an elderly parent or a loved one and you're worried that that might be a diagnosis that's approaching, right? A very common beginning stage is aggression, hostility, being accusational, if that's a word, right? And so if obviously you already have the diagnosis for mom here, she already has protect supervision, but you're definitely not alone. I want to start by saying that you're not alone because it's very common for this population to sort of be a little bit aggressive with their caregivers. And it's kind of silly because you're the one that's helping them, right? But we do see that often. And I've seen that even in my own home when my mom was caring for my grandmother at the time. My grandmother lived with us for like 10 years, and she battled dementia and Alzheimer's. And she would get really aggressive and think that people were stealing her mail or doing something silly, moving around items in the bathroom that belonged to her and hiding them when that wasn't the case at all. It was just her brain sort of betraying her mind sort of betraying her in that case. And so to go back to your question, right? So like, how do you handle this? So if you have a POA or some type of like legal guardianship, if you will, something that allows you to help make decisions for mom or speak for mom, then that will handle this, because then you can explain to the social worker that that wasn't true, right? Hey, my mom just called me a liar. That's just not the reality here, right? That's perfectly fine to say. So something very like what I see a lot is, or what I have seen a lot is, you'll be at the assessment and the caregiver is like, yeah, well, mom still struggles to make her meals. She can't stand in the kitchen for too long. It hurts her back. And she also forgets to turn the stove off. So I've removed her from that. I make all the meals for her currently, right? And then mom hears that and goes, what? I make my meals. I'm independent. I can do that still. Like, I don't need any help with that. And in your mind, you're like, wait a minute. I've been cooking my mom's meals for years now. Like, why would she be saying that? This is kind of making me look like a liar here, right? Exactly like your point, Marissa. So social workers can expect this. It happens all the time. There is nothing wrong with you in that moment, depending on the situation, correcting mom if that's appropriate, or talking to the social worker sort of off the record or privately, say, hey, mom mentioned this, but that's just not the reality here. I have doctor's evidence to prove it, right? The doctor says that she can't be in the kitchen making her meals. I make her meals. So this is just her illness providing this answer. It's not the truth, right? And if you're working with a social worker who's understanding of the situation, then they will know that is true. Okay. So Marissa, I know it's kind of a vague way of helping, but let me know if that resonates at all. You did say that you have a POA. So that's good. That'll help. So now the social worker can understand that you do have some type of legal document in place that helps with making some decisions and helps with speaking for mom in some way, in some capacity medically. And so, yeah, if mom does say something like that because they're being prideful or they're embarrassed that you would kind of admit to some of their limitations, it would be your responsibility, as well as the advocate if you're working with us, right, to make sure that that is a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, and not mom's fault, right? Mom is dealing with something here, and we're here to help, right? We're all one big team for mom. Excuse me. So hopefully that helps. Thank you, Estella. Dia, do they take away school hours? I sometimes help with my child in school, like for behaviors and eloping. That is a can of worms right there. So there's a couple of things here. Oh, you wrote another comment too. Behaviors aren't seen during reassessments. School hours were going to be taken away, as the worker mentioned, because child goes to school. Okay. So set the record straight. School does not typically impact your IHSS hours. Okay. It can in very, very few cases, but it's still very small. So in some cases, and not some, it does happen. If your child or your child in this case, because they're school, if they have time in like bowel and bladder care, maybe there's 5 hours a week for bowel and bladder care. If they're in school 6 hours a day, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, then IHSS they do have the right to refuse a little bit of time, because they would assume that school helps the child in the bathroom at school while you're not there. So if that is the case, then they may remove 15, 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes a week from that total amount. But it's not supposed to be enough to where it's this huge impact on your paycheck every couple of weeks, or a huge impact on this person's hours overall. So if you're seeing that they're removing like half of the hours or a huge chunk, that's a problem. It really should only be a very small amount. But being in school itself does not challenge the hours. The hours are what they are. If this person has the need for 5 hours a week in bowel and bladder care, then they need to be approved for 5 hours a week of bowel and bladder care. It's as simple as that. To go back over the other thing you mentioned, so I'm curious to learn, and you don't have to share here, but why do you have to go to school to mitigate the behaviors like eloping? I ask that because that is the school's responsibility. The school, if you're in a public school district and this child has an IEP, they're in a special day class, then the school is not supposed to be calling you to help with these things. Not unless there's like an extreme emergency situation. So if they're calling you often and saying, hey, your son is eloping again, he's trying to get out, can you come over and help us just keep him in place here? It would be a big help. That's a no-no. Maybe every once in a while, right? That maybe you want to help because it's something you want to do that day. But to rely on you to help them do their job, that's not how it's supposed to go. And so I would highly recommend, if that is what you're experiencing with your school for this child, I would highly recommend you talk to one of our IEP education advocates here. They'll be able to kind of open your eyes to what the school should be doing, because we do see it far too often where the school will call you or call mom and dad on a weekly basis. Some people, it's even daily, where they're going to the school and helping out in some way. That's just not okay. That's not how it works, at least in the public school district. It could be different for a charter school or a private school, but in the public school district, that is not supposed to happen. Laura, is it okay during the assessment to tell the social worker that we have guardianship over our son and not have him present for most of the assessment? He gets very sad and sometimes upset when we talk about what he does wrong. It's not something as a parent we like to have them hear. That is a great question. So technically no. He or she does not need to be present during the entirety of the assessment. The rules say that the social worker has to evaluate this person, they have to meet with this person, and then they have to complete their assessment. The completion of the assessment doesn't have to include that person. If they have an authorized representative, such as yourself, Laura, such as your advocate, if you have an advocate with you, then they can finish the assessment without the recipient physically in the room. I wouldn't recommend having him leave the house, like going to another appointment with somebody else, whatever. I would want him probably in the house. But no, if you feel that it is not a safe space for him emotionally or mentally, and he needs to kind of de-escalate or stay regulated in another room where he's not hearing the conversation, there's nothing wrong with saying that to the social worker. Now, I imagine you ask because maybe you've had a bad experience with that. I have seen social workers have issues with that because they want the child in front of them. They want to observe them for a whole hour or hour and a half whenever they're there, right? But the short answer is that does not have to go that way. And if they're upset about that, thankfully, that doesn't happen often with an advocate. If an advocate is present, the social workers know that they can't cry about something like that. If the child needs space to be away from this conversation, they can have that space. So it's not a super formal process like some social workers want to make it. And so I'm sorry if you have experienced that. I hope you haven't, but definitely let us know. Patricia, I just got on, not sure if this is your topic. About 3 weeks ago, I received a call for my daughter's assessment. It was on April 9th. I told the worker, oh no, we are out of town that day. If I can change the date. And she stated, I'm sorry, but we're not allowing changes in appointments. I didn't want to argue with her because I know that this is a new social worker, and with everything kind of going on, my daughter is 3 years old. I told her my daughter will not be up at, sorry, I cannot see the rest of the comment, Patricia, but I'll address what I do see here. So this is a big challenge that we're seeing. It used to be not much of an issue, where if you couldn't make the assessment that day, you would call IHSS and say, hey, I'm actually out of town on vacation that day. Can we scoot it to the following week? Whatever, reschedule it. And IHSS is supposed to accommodate to that. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is IHSS is not accommodating to that, and they're just terminating the case if you can't meet with them on that day. It's not fair. It is not right. And it's also not something that you have to be too worried about. So why I say that is because as I just got off the phone with somebody, not that long ago who called and had a very similar situation. If a social worker threatens to deny or remove the benefit because you need to reschedule, your hands are kind of tied. I would recommend dropping whatever plans you have and just tackling the assessment. If you can do that, if that's possible, I would do that. But if it's not possible, sometimes it can't be, then you would have to kind of manage the next step. So what is the next step? Well, if the social worker says, well, fine, I'm terminating the benefit, you will receive a notice in the mail. That notice is going to tell you a month later that your benefit is going to be terminated. Sorry, I froze there for a second. Hopefully I'm good now. You'll receive that notice saying, hey, you missed your assessment. Therefore, we're terminating your benefit a month from now. Now, when you get that notice, you'll see that it is a month away that they're going to terminate it. That gives you time and an opportunity to file an appeal with something called aid paid pending. Okay. When the appeals team receives this request and they see that it's just because of a rescheduling for the assessment date, they don't want to go through a whole appeal for something like this. They will usually get it resolved. And we're pretty good at managing that process. But that is what has to happen. So it will get fixed, but it will set you back a couple of months sometimes. So it's very frustrating. It is not great. So Patricia, if you are able to drop the appointment, whatever that was, just so that you can make this assessment work, great. I know you said you're out of town, so if it's not possible, then you may have to get denied and file an appeal on that issue. But thankfully, it can get resolved. It absolutely can. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm glad that these videos and streams are helpful. We're really appreciative of you. She has a one-on-one aide, and I work in her school. Let me go back to your comment here. Okay, so Padilla, you were mentioning that you go to the school for the behaviors. Okay, so you actually work with the school? Like, are you contracted as like staff at the school? Because if that's the case, then you are a part of the staff, right? You're a part of that child's support system at school. So if that's the case, you're not driving to school, like I initially thought that might have been the case, right? So yeah, if you can clarify that, that would be great. Are they like pulling you away from other classes? Like, are you an aide for another class, or are you an aide in his class? Laura, we will have Galt Advocacy on the phone with us. Good. And your advocate will take care of you. They'll help you design a little bit of a game plan and kind of help prepare for those conversations. But yeah, if you can clarify, when you say that you work at her school, are you on staff or are you volunteering? That would be a good thing to clarify. Be helpful, rather. And Patricia, I couldn't get the full comment here. It cut off. So if you could copy and paste the rest of it, or Teresa, if you can see it from your laptop, that'd be great. And thank you everybody for being here, and thank you for the likes and the loves. We appreciate it. If you guys are able to share the stream, I know I've mentioned it a few times, like the page, Galt Advocacy, if you can. Share the stream, share other streams to other special needs groups or advocacy groups to get as much information out there for people who need it. Padilla, you said yes. I'm assuming you're saying yes, you are a staff member of this school. Is that right? Or yes, you are a voluntary worker. All right, second part. The social worker wants to come at 9 a.m. and unfortunately my daughter is still asleep at that time, being that she has sleeping issues. She said She would need to interview her after we talk. What if my daughter does not want to wake up? Nothing wrong with that. So I want to say prepare because you're not doing anything wrong. And technically your daughter's not doing anything wrong. If you have somebody with special needs in your home, you can't control everything that they do. If they have a system in place, like sleeping during a certain time, then meeting with the social worker may not be possible at the time, right? Now, if the social worker comes and you say, hey, I'm sorry, she's sleeping right now, she's not going to wake up, we can try, but she is here if you want to try. Then it's up to the social worker. The social worker, in my opinion, can still conduct an assessment. But if they feel that that's just not possible, then they may have to come back for a part 2 assessment. Thank you, Teresa. So if you guys are looking for some free seminar information, Teresa pinned a comment here for you to check out. Yeah, staff, sorry, I'm currently an 8, sometimes being pulled out of class. Okay, so again, that's just the same as if you're at home and they ask you to come to school, right? If they're taking away from your other job at school to help with your child, that, I mean, unless it's in the IEP that's how it's supposed to be, I would have a problem with that personally, because that's not how it's supposed to work, right? So if you need help with that video, please let us know. Our education team absolutely can help you with this. Oh, thank you. We plan to call. Okay, great. Yes, please call Galt Advocacy. And yes, I did change our plans. Thank you for the information. Of course. Okay, well, I'm really sorry you had to change your plans. Let's pull that comment up here. That is really frustrating. I know it's what I just recommended and suggested. I do stand by that, unfortunately, right now, because it is just a little bit easier than dealing with the headache of appealing the denial. But if there's social workers watching today, just know it's an issue that needs to be fixed. I know you probably don't have any control over it, but we do know a little bit about where it's coming from right now. The state of California has come down and shared with the counties some very specific things about fees. So if the county excuse me, if the county is late on conducting an annual assessment, they get fined like $3,000 a month or a week or something like that. This is where I wish Dakota was here, Teresa, because Dakota's mentioned this a couple of times and I don't recall right off the top of my head. But the county gets they get a fee assessed to them that they're going to have to pay for moving forward. That's a part of one of the changes that are happening. And so if they are responsible for that fee for being late on the annual assessment, it's to encourage them to not be late. But with that, instead of being able to work with the family on rescheduling the assessment, a lot of times what we're seeing is that the social workers get so busy that instead of scheduling the assessment 3 months in advance, they schedule it the week of the deadline. And so when you reach out, you're like, hey, so I can't do that day. Can we push it out the following week or maybe next month? And the social worker is like, no, I only have a week to do your assessment or else. Again, that's not your problem. That's the social worker's problem. It's their deadline. It's the county's deadline. And unfortunately, it's just bleeding into the patient space here, right? And it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. So I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Patricia, that you had to change your plans. Hopefully it wasn't anything too crazy. Hopefully this assessment goes well for you. And hopefully the plans get back on the schedule, whatever those plans might have been. I did not know that about the fine and just didn't want to tell the social worker, that because I didn't want to rock the boat. Yeah, it is kind of a pick your battles type of situation. And again, some social workers are easier to work with than others. Some social workers will be really honest and tell you that, be like, hey, so look, here's the deal. Like, I have to terminate your case. But when I do, just file an appeal. Ask for aid paid pending. I'll see that come through the system. I'll advocate for you as well. Like, if you have a social worker who says that, great. Their hands are tied, but they're still wanting to help you and be understanding. But if that social worker is just flat out using it as a threat and forcing you to cancel your plans, I don't like that. But there's not too much you can do, unfortunately. Not right now, at least. Hopefully in the future that'll change. But rocking the boat is tricky because, again, it's a delicate relationship. You, your child or your loved one with special needs, and the social worker. it's hard because they are kind of like the financial future in their own hands, right? Your financial future is sort of like in their hands, right? If you're relying on this IHSS paycheck because your full-time job is this loved one of yours that you're caring for, then not only does this paycheck, of course, help you as the caregiver because it's your job, but it helps them. It helps them get the care that they need. And so when that's in jeopardy because of a scheduling issue, I lose a little bit of hope. But thank you so much for sharing, Patricia. And thank you, Padilla. And thank you, Laura. Really good examples and questions. And I'm sorry that you guys are experiencing some of these things. Teresa, do you remember when the counties were sending out notices of action saying cases were canceled and then immediately restarting the case for the purpose of restarting the clock on when the assessment needed to be done? I remember when we had a lot of those. I wonder if that will come back now that the counties pay. It's possible. I do remember, absolutely. And it was frustrating because it would scare a lot of people and not everybody was getting it. So a lot of people would have that conversation, that scary conversation where the social worker is like, if you can't meet, then I'm sending a denial. And that would scare them into say, oh my gosh, okay, fine. Yes, I'll move my plans. And then they meet with them, right? Not knowing that this denial actually is what they refer to it. They refer to it internally as an elimination, meaning that they eliminate terminate. I'm sorry, a termination of, there's a specific term for it. It's termination something, where it's not necessarily canceling the benefit and removing it from your life. It's just terminating it so that the clock resets, just like you mentioned. And it doesn't give it eliminates any overlapping issue or gaps. Everything overlaps. So the opposite of what I said, sorry. And so this is what we would want, Teresa. So thank you for sharing, because this is the right way to do it. If they want to tell you and say, hey, okay, no problem. If you can't meet here, I have to terminate the benefit because I have to start the clock over, which means the case is going to sort of like restart in a way. That's fine. That's helpful. It means you're not going to lose your hours. It gets pushed out another couple of months for the due date, and we're okay. But I'm not seeing that right now. Teresa, I don't know if you've heard anything different with the advocates, but we definitely should connect with the team to see. Nancy, we have our annual reassessment coming up next month for my child's protective provision. We just received our approval notice for another year with no changes to his hours. I'm confused as to why he was approved for another year before our reassessment. Do you see this happening often? I don't see it often. I have seen it. It's confusing, and sometimes it's just an error. So I would prepare for the assessment to happen. I would still prepare and plan for the social worker to be showing up to your home on whatever specific date that was. So I would also, if you can, reach out to the social worker or work with your advocate if you have an advocate and have them do it, because sometimes those are just sent in error. And then the social worker shows up and doesn't even know that you got a notice. So it's hard to say exactly what it is for this particular scenario, but it is something that we've seen. I don't see it often, though. Every once in a while. But hang on to this notice. That's one thing I would do. Because sometimes we'll see that, and then you'll get another notice a month later saying that you missed your assessment, and they want to deny it. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, hold on. I got this notice saying that we were approved for another year, but we had never met with them. And then a month later, we got a notice that we missed our assessment, and they got to remove it. What happened? And that's just clerical errors. Mishaps, it just happens. And so it does happen a little more often than it should. It doesn't happen often, but more than once is still too many times. Ooh, Padilla, is there an email for the education team? So what I would recommend is emailing info@Galt Advocacy. So if you email info@Galt Advocacy, they'll be able to send that information to the education team for you. And then the education team would reach out to you. But I don't think they have a direct email that you can send them to. Looking through the comments again to see if I missed anybody. I think we've been on track so far. Teresa, if if you're not in the middle of anything, can you tell us and share a little bit more about the free seminar coming up? I'll continue to look through the comments here, see if I see anything. But if you haven't attended a free seminar, you should. They're great. I won't be at this next one, but hopefully Dakota might. You guys know Dakota Space and Nicole, Myra, Teresa, you gonna be at the seminar? Teresa isn't normally, but okay, yes. So I think we're all caught up here. I don't think I missed anything, which is great. And again, in case anybody forgot, Dakota couldn't show up today because he chose jury duty over us. That's why he's not here today. So let's remember that for next week or the week after when he's back, and we'll tell him. Free seminar April 25th in Orange and April 26th in Glendale. All right, everybody, if you are in SoCal, if you are in a drivable distance to Orange County or to Glendale, which is Glendale, Orange County? No, Glendale's LA County, I think, right? I think Glendale's in LA County. Either way, Orange County or Glendale, California, if you are near any of those areas, oh, I'm sorry, Orange, the city of Orange. I forgot there's a city of Orange. So the city of Orange and the city of Glendale. So the 25th will be Orange, 26th will be Glendale. If you can attend either of those meetings, Teresa, you said, yes, it's North LA. That's right. Gold Advocates will have a $25 gift card from Amazon for those who pre-register. So if you go online right now, Teresa, she sent the link in earlier in the comment section. If you pre-register ahead of time, that's an oxymoron. If you book a slot ahead of time, hence the pre-registering, you will be entitled to receiving a $25 gift card, Amazon gift card. That is amazing. Thanks for putting that together, Teresa. Yeah, I emailed Gold Advocacy about this on Monday and haven't gotten a response. Email them again. I'm just kidding. No, I'm sorry you haven't gotten a response yet. Teresa and I can definitely try and forward your message. I would recommend calling the office. Fridays are a little sticky. I don't know when Michelle or Tina at reception go home on Fridays, but you're more than welcome to send another follow-up email. It may just be buried at the moment. We are definitely a little inundated with questions, but we will get to you. Absolutely. So hang in there. But maybe if you don't hear anything back today, I would maybe give the office a ring on Monday. Teresa says 1 gift card per family, y'all. So don't sign up all 10 of your relatives. So thank you, Teresa. Thank you. That would not be cool. That wouldn't be cool. So don't do that. We are just about out of time. So if anybody has any last minute questions here before we clock out, please let us know. I'm here for just a couple more minutes. And again, before you leave, if you could share the video, if you could tag somebody in this stream, these streams get saved to our page for a little while. So if somebody's not able to watch this live, they can always come back and watch it. But if you like it, love it, tag people or share it, that is how this gets pushed out into the algorithm and all that jazz. And it helps bring more people to see some of this information. And if you speak Spanish and you want to do a Q&A in Spanish, Nicole, I think, Teresa, if you can confirm, Nicole or oh my gosh, I was about to say Maria. Nicole or Myra will be joining at 1 o'clock in Spanish today. So if you speak Spanish and you want to chat with those advocates, they'll be able to take care of you and run the same Q&A session, but in Spanish at 1, which is in 10 minutes. So we'll have to leave here in just a moment to give them some space to get ready. But so far, no other questions. So I will probably just let everybody go. Thanks, everybody, for being here like you are every single week. Teresa says that this seminar is going to be handled by all the ladies, Myra, Nicole, the other Myra, and Michelle and Lori. Awesome. Great. That is a great stacked team right there. So if you're able to go to these seminars and check Galt Advocacy out, you'll be able to meet Myra Galt herself. As well as Myra G, the other Myra who speaks Spanish, the famous Michelle. We all know Michelle at the front desk. Michelle's awesome. And Nicole, who you see weekly on Facebook as well. And Lori. Glad Lori gets to be there. You confirmed, yes, Nicole at 1. Perfect. So if you speak Spanish, check out Nicole at 1 o'clock here on Facebook and YouTube, okay? Marisol, back in 2016, when my son was approved for IHSS, me and my daughter signed up to be his providers. My daughter was his primary provider. I was in the process and going part-time at work to be able to be the primary provider. However, I submitted everything. My son was approved for PS and bathing, among the other things, but I did get back pay for dressing, restroom, but I never got back pay for PS. Interesting. It's a little unclear. If you want to reach out, that's something that maybe the office can look into a little bit and see if there's a way to go retroactive on that. It's tough. Retroactive cases like this are very, very tricky, but they are possible in some ways. So connect with Galt Advocacy. We'll take a look at it and see if there's a way to help you. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, everybody. Just enough time here to let Nicole get ready. You all can take a quick break, but come back at 1 o'clock so you can hang out with Nicole and conduct this Q&A in Spanish for her. Bring a lot of great questions. Keep her busy for the next hour, okay? But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy this beautiful weather if you have it. I know we do up here in Northern California, but stay safe this weekend. We appreciate you all, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.